Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you're with us. If you're joining us here locally on the airwaves in Santa Barbara, California, we welcome you at TV Santa Barbara. And many of you join us at goodlifetelevision.org. That's goodlifetelevision.org. We welcome you there. All the episodes are there. You can see a lot of great stories, great people, great overcomers, entrepreneurs. We've had so many great guests, so we think you'll love it. goodlifetelevision.org. You can also, in addition to watching the full form interviews, you can watch what we call power clips on the right side of the page. So it's some good stuff. And you can find us at all the social media platforms as well, as many of you are. And I wanted to mention our podcasts. So all these television shows become podcasts, and many of you are finding us at Good Life Conversations. So Good Life Conversations, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify or all the other platforms, you can find us there, Good Life Conversations, and we'd love to have you check it out. I'm so excited about my guest today. Rebecca Capps is with me. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist and also has something called Mind Body Thrive, which is at mindbodythrive.com. We're going to talk all about it. Welcome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Dean.
Where are you from?
I am originally from a little town called Sonora, not to be confused with Sonoma. It's the gold country.
Okay.
Have you ever been?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Sonora is up in that.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I grew up like chopping down my own Christmas trees and like making jumps in my backyard.
Really?
It was an interesting, fun childhood at times.
Yeah. That's good. How did you end up in Santa Barbara?
I went to school here. I went to UCSB and then I went on to Pacifica and did my graduate program there.
Okay. And then you just decided to come back.
Yes,
stay.
I fell in love and married Todd, as we were just talking about, and yeah, I'm here now.
We talked about it a little bit before we came on, but Rebecca's mother-in-law is Lois Capps, who used to be our congresswoman for many years. She used to come to my Christmas parties in the cul-de-sac. So Lois, if you're watching, I hope you remember the Christmas parties in the cul-de-sac we had. We had some great times.
That's so wonderful.
I don't know if Lois ever made it to the dance floor.
I bet she did.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
She may have. Maybe so. But Lois Capps, wonderful person, wonderful family here in Santa Barbara. So were you always interested in kind of the stuff that you're doing now? Has this always been kind of part of your life?
Good question. It started, I developed a life-threatening eating disorder by age, I think it was 11, and then I was hospitalized by age 12.
Really?
Yes. Honestly, eating disorders have the highest mortality rate out of any mental illness. 1 in 5 sufferers die, either from suicide or cardiac issues. It's a very serious problem.
Wow.
That's initially what got me interested. Obviously, back then I didn't know that this would be my path, but the journey, it's been long and winding, but I'm here now because I have a calling and I serve women who want to heal in their mind and their body from the inside out.
So how prevalent are eating disorders among young women?
Oh gosh, the rate has exponentially risen. I think it's the 30 million people in America is the current statistic.
Deal with eating disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you came out of that yourself. I mean, you've had that experience.
Yes, and as a result of that, I mean, obviously I'm educated and have all the things, but the experiential knowledge of that really is profound and a gift in this work that I do. And
wow.
Yeah.
So you are a licensed marriage and family therapist and wellness coach. I was reading about this, and you mentioned in here you take a whole person approach to the work you're doing. What does that mean?
That means, for example, we can't look at the bulimic profile. They are often lacking in certain nutrients and vitamins, and as a result, that can mimic that of depression. So instead of just resorting to a pill, a quick fix kind of thing, certainly those have their place, but we need to look at the underlying components, treating the root cause so that we can actually heal. Looking at the mind, what are the cognitive distortions involved that are causing us to get stuck into this negative feedback loop, then we look at the body, like somatic-based practices where we can feel safe in the body. And then looking at the thrive part, like how can we thrive and focus on a why to our life? What's the mission here? Because otherwise it's going to be harder to sustain, I would say, your recovery.
Yeah.
What is it? Viktor Frankl. Are you familiar with his work?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning. He was a Holocaust survivor, and his whole family died in the Holocaust. And he came back out of that experience and developed something called logos therapy. And he treated people who were extremely suicidal. And there are a lot of good nuggets from him, but he says, he who has a why can bear almost any how. And maybe your audience, they're suffering right now and they don't know how to get to healing.
Yeah.
But if they click into their why,
Yeah.
the pieces will reveal themselves.
That's really good.
Thank
The
you.
why. Yeah.
Yes.
So getting to the why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why am I here?
Why are we all here?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Uh-huh.
So to take start with the mind part. So, because I was reading about this and you were talking about kind of the loop of negative talk that people can experience.
Yes.
What do you do about that?
Well, there are several things. First, like on the most basic, like cognitive behavioral therapy aspect, we do look at cognitive distortions, like your black and white thinking. The anorexic profile, they do tend to have like very rigid thinking, like black and white. These are good foods, these are bad, and there's no gray area kind of thing. Overgeneralization, kind of viewing everything as like a never-ending pattern of defeat, when really this is just one part of the story. So, I mean, and then also people who are like really perfectionistic tend to place a lot of should statements, like I should be here, instead of we're here now. What can we accept, and how can we have gratitude for where we're at?
Yeah. Gratitude's a wonderful thing.
It is.
Perfectionism's not a good thing.
No, it
Yeah.
is not.
Yeah, I think I've been broken of my perfectionism, hopefully, but perfectionism is a defeating thing for people.
Yeah, you're already defeated
Right.
right out of the gates.
Right. You don't have a chance. Right. That's a
Yeah.
good point. So you're kind of negative self-talk, or does it help? This is something I've thought about. Does it help when someone says it out loud to someone else?
Yes.
Here's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Or here's what I'm thinking. Say it.
Right. Externalizing this, because shame exists only when we hold it
Hide it.
inside. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a petri dish for shame when we're just like not talking about it. So
Yeah.
just being seen, and talk therapy is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
In order to externalize, and then we label these things that go on. There's a whole process, obviously. So going back to what you asked about, like the mind, so there's the cognitive aspects, but then there's also, since eating disorders are medical issues, we have to first stabilize the client, and again, going back to like the nutrients and looking at like blood work, and that's what I mean too by like the holistic picture that we need to treat.
And some of that is a big deal. I mean, if you're really low on iron,
Yes.
it's life-changing.
It really is. There are many studies like with schizophrenia and things like that where iron and vitamin B and zinc are very much missing.
So you want to get a handle on that stuff. So if a client comes in and they're suffering in this way, one of the first things you're doing is stabilizing the body.
Yes.
I mean, getting the
Because
things
then talk therapy can be that much more effective.
right. You feel better.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a
sure
good
do.
point. And is sunshine a big deal? I mean, is sun?
Oh, yes, and grounding and all kinds of just the return to nature.
Yeah. That's so powerful. I mean, that's how that's the world that God created. I mean, that we're in. And so it's amazing how it all ties together.
Yes, a lot of this is about returning to that light and removing any barriers to love that we have. And that was very much the case for me. There's a spiritual aspect to this work that I think goes overlooked oftentimes in my professional milieu.
Is that they're not talking about the spiritual part?
Yes. I believe that many mental health conditions, especially that of eating disorders and addictions, it's a spiritual issue.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. There's a quote, not to be cheesy, but
yeah,
that's fine.
Me too. I'm cheesy.
But somebody said, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
That's right.
We're just wearing these bodies for a period of time.
To expand on that, and I completely agree, there's this line in A Course in Miracles, and it's really helped me, and it goes like, I am not a body, I am free. And it reminds me, whenever I'm like in the body image mode, it's like, wait a minute, I am that spiritual being, and this is merely a vessel for me to connect to my why that we were talking about.
Yes, that's so great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's really. So you see people with so if somebody's watching and they know somebody who's dealing with an eating disorder or something like that, you deal with that, and then you help women.
I do. I have male clients, and people often assume that men don't have this too, but they do. It often goes underreported due to stigma, but predominantly I do serve women. Like, that's what got me into this, and I have a strong feeling about this. Once women can heal themselves with this, I mean, we can do anything.
Right.
In business, in our relationships, as mothers.
So if someone's watching this and they're suffering in this alone right now.
Yeah.
They're all alone and they're just, feel like they're dying. What do you say?
That there is hope. I am living proof of that. And that there's power in asking for help.
Yes.
Reach your hand out, ask for it, and then seek out professionals, religious leaders, whoever is inspiring for you and can help you get from point A to point B, and having like a vision for your life.
Yeah.
You may not have it now, but you can carefully and thoughtfully cultivate your life.
Right. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
We don't have to be perfect.
That's wonderful. There's a scripture that says, when I'm weak, I'm strong. We tend to, I think in life, especially I think maybe in the United States, independence.
Rugged individualism.
Yeah. I'm strong, and I can't show any weakness. When there's such power when you can show weakness.
Absolutely. I would say it's vulnerability. Brene Brown talks all about it. I'm sure all the therapists talk about it, but she talks about vulnerability and how that too is a superpower. It's the most beautiful thing. I mean, I wouldn't have the life that I'm leading now, the relationship that I have, all of it without that one aspect. And when you're suffering from like an eating disorder, you're going at things alone, you're trying to like do things based on willpower, and you're shutting everyone out because you don't want to show that vulnerable side.
Yeah.
And that did not work for me.
Right.
No.
I don't think it works for anybody.
Yeah.
But the minute you let somebody in and you say it, I mean, that's another thing. I think naming, saying it out loud.
Yes.
Let me tell you what's going on, like with a trusted person, is such a life-changing experience. So it must be really wonderful for you to see somebody coming from real brokenness, real suffering, to coming to life almost.
Honestly, it's really the joy of my life outside of being a mom, to see those kind of transformations.
Yeah.
Because this work matters.
Yeah. So it's absolutely.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, I know. Vulnerability.
Yeah, it's okay to be vulnerable. You're on the couch.
Yeah.
I'm not a trained therapist, but
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, that's really touching. And then is there other, in terms of your counseling, do you do other kind of marriage and family?
I predominantly work with eating disorders and addictions, but
Okay.
then also, collect myself here. I have programs, and I'm currently working on a new one where I'm looping in an Ayurvedic practitioner so that she can, in tandem with my therapeutic services in my program, help people with the intuitive eating aspect and to eat according to their dosha type.
Huh.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Because everyone has their own constitution, like of a dosha. It's like Vata, Pitta, Kapha. It's an ancient, it originates from India. It's an ancient way of eating and going back to nature and eating according to nature's rhythms. And it's quite beautiful. Going back to the experience that I had in the hospital, like they had to refeed me. I get it. They shove like Ensure down your throat, which I don't know if you're familiar. It's like that drink that's...
Yeah.
But I was not necessarily taught how to be with food, how to develop a sacredness and just like a healthy relationship, to have satisfaction with it. It was just the enemy. So I try to teach people that they can have a sacred, intuitive relationship with food where they can connect deeply, reconnect, that is, to their hunger cues and their fullness cues.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So you're saying in this situation and folks facing this issue, their food is like an enemy.
Correct.
And so you're talking about building a healthy relationship with food.
Yes, because unlike with, let's say, AA, that's very clear. I'm not saying it's easy, but just that part is black and white. You cut the alcohol out. You don't do that with food.
Right.
You have to learn how to be with it.
You have to eat. Right.
And it's the great connector. We love breaking bread. It's
Right.
a really beautiful thing.
Yeah. Right. That's a very good point. The Bible's full of food references, I found. I mean,
bet.
Jesus, when he came out, I think he was cooking fish
Yeah.
for his friends on the beach. Food is a big part of our life, and table and gathering. And there is a beauty to that.
Absolutely.
So if food is the enemy, there's a lot you miss. There's a lot of life that, I'm just thinking out loud here, but is that right?
Absolutely. I feel like almost like on a metaphorical level, to have anorexia nervosa means it's like a denial of life. You denying
Right.
yourself of food is denying yourself of life and the promises of this life.
Wow. So mind, body, and you're wanting to help women and men thrive. If you were to describe, we only have a few minutes left, but if you were to describe kind of that, what does that look like to thrive?
It's like a flow state where you lose track of time. It's not that there aren't hard moments, but you know that there's a greater cause or aim that you're working towards, and therefore there's meaning to your life. And when you die, your memory lives on and the impact of what you've done.
Yeah. You've connected with your why.
Yes.
Yeah. Your life becomes about your why. Yeah. That seems like a powerful vision for somebody who is suffering in the darkness to get free and have hope.
Yeah. I mean, I can't overemphasize the fact that every day I wake up and being able to do what I do, I would not have thought that this would be my reality, or that I could, in fact, transform my wounds into wisdom, and that experience actually was for something.
Yeah. Yes. Redemption. I mean, it's a redeeming story. Your story.
It is. And
Yeah.
I hope to inspire others
Yeah.
to do the same.
Yeah. Beauty from ashes.
I love
Yeah.
that, the phoenix.
Yeah. That's good. We could talk all day.
Oh, all day.
This is wonderful. Yeah. So if you know of someone or are someone who needs help in this area, I would strongly commend Rebecca Capps. Mindbodythrive.com. Mindbodythrive.com is where you can find her. She's locally here in Santa Barbara, but so you're taking clients. I mean,
I am. It's honestly the pandemic, like
it's full.
It got real full, but I am, and I'm also, again, with the program, that's going to be helpful too for me to connect to people in a larger, more scalable way too.
I see. Yeah. And what is the program? What is that going to be exactly?
It's going to be Mind, Body, Thrive, and it's going to be, there will be a 3-month and a 6-month long option, and basically replicating how I work with clients individually.
Okay, but they can do it from wherever.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
It's really exciting.
Yeah, that's really good. So, licensed marriage and family therapist and wellness coach who's committed to helping people on their path of healing, and it comes out of deep personal experience for Rebecca that it's being transformed into something beautiful. So it's great to talk with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. See you next
Appreciate
time.
it.
What is Good Life TV, you may ask? Well, let me tell you. Good Life TV exists to inspire, empower, educate, and encourage. Those are the things we want to do in a rough year that we're having. We want to encourage you. We want to inspire you. We're telling stories. They're real life stories. They're not all celebrities. They're people from all walks of life. And I think you're really going to be encouraged. There's a bunch of them at goodlifetelevision.org. So go there today, goodlifetelevision.org. Get encouraged. We love you. God bless you.
I feel a bit caught in between at times because, like I've told my children for years, when God calls you to be a bridge, you have to expect that you're going to get stepped on every now and then.
Likely that a traumatized person will cause more trauma. It's also true that a cherished person will be able to find their way to the joy there is in cherishing themselves and others.
Notion of justice and fairness just always appealed to me. Justice was my calling, not just a career. Pursuing justice for the poor and less privileged has been like the greatest adventure of my life.
Find a mentor, find a coach, because in the coach there is the man who's climbed the mountain, you just begin, or summited the mountain, you're just beginning to climb. It's just wisdom.
I just want people to become friends with the author so that they can have that perspective on life and realize that they were made on purpose, for a purpose, and they're on the stage of the world right now to play an important role.
If you want something, you have to really articulate what it is. You have to say it out loud, and then you have to be willing to receive that too, and be willing to feel that you're worthy of receiving that.
Partisan legislatures in Congress are meant to debate.
Right.
To be passionate about your differences, different
Right.
points of views.
Right.
But they're not supposed to be such that you hate one another or that you demagogue one another.
You know, and that's the great thing about it, because nobody's better than anybody else. We all got the moment of today, of right now, to be the best person that we can be, and most importantly, you know, take the gift that we've been given and give it away to other people, because I know I can't keep it unless I give it away.
I guess just to build knowledge and awareness of it, just so people can have a better understanding of what it is. You know, I think having those conversations builds empathy, and with empathy comes solidarity.
When I see positive things happen in the world, when I see stories that young kids, something fantastic happens to them, those are the good things in life, and when you can do things like that, that you can help someone maybe achieve some of their goals in life.
Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. I'm so glad you're with us, whether you're joining us locally here on the airwaves in Santa Barbara, California at TV Santa Barbara, or at goodlifetelevision.org, where we see you're joining us from all over the world. And so we're grateful. You can also find us on all the social media platforms. Great stories. A Good Life is here to honor, to inspire, to encourage, to uplift. We dwell on the good. We also we keep it real. And so we talk about real issues and real struggles and real suffering. And of course, today in the world, there is a lot of suffering. And so we don't ignore that, but we also shine light. And so that's what we're doing. And that's what we're doing today. I'm so excited about my guest. Josh Youssef is with me. Josh is the president and CEO of Help the Persecuted. Josh, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Dean. Good to be on.
Josh is, they're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, and Help the Persecuted, as I've read about it, is a wonderful thing, doing wonderful things throughout the world. And so we're going to talk about that. And I know, Josh, previous to Help the Persecuted, you served for 17 years in global media ministry, and you've done all kinds of things. But tell us kind of about just you before we get into kind of the work. Kind of talk about you and you kind of growing up. And I know you've been involved in ministry work for a long time, but kind of talk about growing up and your background.
Yeah, happy to. Grew up as a pastor's kid. Michael Youssef is my father, pastor of a church here in Atlanta, Georgia, and wasn't always a media, ministry associated with my father's church, but grew into that. And when I left university in the early 2000s, my father had asked me to kind of come and work with him and help establish media in the Middle East and North Africa, where our family is originally from Egypt. And so I still helped sort of build out some of the radio programs, and then ultimately we moved into television. And in 2009, we launched a channel on multiple satellite platforms throughout Europe, Middle East, and North Africa, both in Arabic, French, and English. And at that point, I began to build out what we call a follow-up network and an audience relations network. So people would contact us. We would get 2,000 to 3,000 pieces of mail a month, and WhatsApp and Facebook posts and all kinds of communications back from people in the field. And then our field team would actually respond to those people at sort of a frontline level. And so I built that network from Morocco all the way to Iraq, of different team members, indigenous team members who would respond to people. And it was in that, not too long after we built that satellite network, that a lot of our field team were saying to us, the problems that these people are dealing in, the problems that these people are facing are much more complex than I need a Bible. Many of these people who've left Islam or come to faith in Jesus are being persecuted. They're being kicked out of their homes. They're, being ostracized from community. There's a term we use called civic death, which is when somebody leaves Islam and the community basically sort of attempts to really strangle them back to Islam. So they cut off their credit card or their cash, they take their passport, their ability to earn a living. And so I thought about it and I prayed about it, and the board at the time said, look, let's set up a small fund and we'll use those funds to help these people get out of trouble. And what started as a little $100,000 a year fund to help these people is now a $7 million a year organization that takes cases. Last year we helped 46,000 people, persecuted Christians, helps cases from various forms of persecution, where we take them and help them, get them into safe housing, get them out of a dangerous situation, and even into what we call enduring livelihood, which are little packages of grants that help them establish a business or establish a way of earning income outside of the society which disagrees with what they're doing.
Wow. That is wonderful. And I want to get into the details of that. I'm a pastor's kid too.
Okay.
So we both survived it somehow.
That's good.
It's kind of amazing, isn't it? Did you come to the Lord early in your life? I mean, did you have an encounter early with what was your own faith journey like?
I mean, when I was 7, I definitely remember my father talking to me about the Lord and about the need to receive him as Savior. And I think in that moment, I probably did it because I trusted my dad. I knew that he
Yeah.
had my best interest in mind. But I would say that I was a good person through high school and into college. And I think I was a Christian. I was probably just not growing. But my senior year in college, there was a river accident that took place between me and 3 friends. We had gone to canoe a river, and the hydroelectric dam had been released upstream when we went out on this canoe, and 2 of my friends almost died that day. We ultimately those 2 were rescued, and they spent time in a hospital, but the Lord really spoke to me in a very clear and unique way that day. It was April 26, 2001. And yeah, I just knew something had changed, and something, the way that I viewed the world, the way that I viewed work, the way that I think I viewed sin it all changed that day. And so my wife and I often debate, was that the day that I was saved? I don't know. I definitely know that I came to a much more real understanding concerning the Lord, and my devotion to him certainly went to a new level.
Yeah, that's so true. I think I probably have a pretty similar story to that. Where there's a faith journey that maybe starts young, but then has moments of real deepening and kind of changing based on life experiences, and like you had. So I think that's fantastic. And I think it's great that you're building on the legacy of your dad. And I've read a little bit about Dr. Youssef, and that's also wonderful. And that you've stepped out and built this, Help the Persecuted. It's really great. So I want to talk about, first of all, the situation. So people that are watching this are not going to know, because I had very little idea until I started reading about you. People are not going to know about the situation that's actually happening in the world in terms of the persecution, and you're talking specifically about the persecution of Christians. So educate us in terms of what is actually happening in the world as it relates to persecution of Christians, the numbers, where, how, and so forth.
Well, during the Trump administration era, President Trump and Vice President Pence would have these regular meetings at the State Department in the summertime regarding this issue of persecution. And it was really broad, kind of a broad persecution conference. This religious freedom ministerial is what they called it. And Ambassador Brownback was the one who really put all that together. But it focused on persecution globally. And at those conferences, they would often say that the most persecuted religion in the world today is Christianity. And I think that caught a lot of people by surprise. That data point catches people by surprise, because we don't experience that necessarily in the West, in the US or Canada or Australia or England. But the rest of the world, which is really a majority of the world's population, the reality is, for the Christian population, they are operating in a minority paradigm. And so whether it's within the Islamic world, the Christian minority experiences a heavy degree of persecution, or it's in China, where there's still continues to be crackdown on Christian pastors and church leaders. So it is hard for people in the West to understand that, but it is a big issue, and particularly in the Middle East, North Africa, Central Asia. As you look at Iran and Afghanistan, there's not just a persecution at a state level, because some of those countries are absolutely working very hard to eradicate the Christian church, but not just at a state level, but at a familial level. So families, in fact, probably more so than the state, are persecuting their own people when they leave Islam, whether they leave Islam for an atheism or an agnostic kind of view, or Christianity. And so that is the reality globally of where the church sits.
And I've heard talking about the state. I mean, I think about India. I worked for an organization that's done a lot of work in India, and I forget what you call those brown coat, people, but there's a lot of persecution of Christians in India, isn't there?
There are, and it's surprising because you've got down in Kerala in the west, south and west, you've got a good Christian population, but the state, the Hindu population can actually be quite antagonistic towards Christians, not just Muslims. There's, I've often thought that maybe over time, as India becomes more capitalistic, that they might change their course, but it doesn't appear that that's been the case. Probably the worst state-sponsored terrorist states would be Iran and Afghanistan. Iran takes it to another level. I mean, there's very few Iranian Christians, including two on our staff, one in Iran and one in a neighboring country. But they both have spent time in jail, significant. One spent 3 years in jail for his faith. And so, and this is just commonplace when you talk to Iranian Christians. They suffer significantly.
Wow. And so, in some of the literature here, I saw that it says more than 360 million face extreme persecution worldwide. Every 2 hours, a Christian is killed for their faith. Christians in the Muslim world are often seen as second-class citizens and treated accordingly. And Muslims who come to faith in Christ face possible death, torture, loss of family, and employment. So there is a lot of suffering that's going on in relationship to this. And so talk about the vision, what Help the Persecuted does, how you do it, and kind of the vision for your involvement.
Yeah, so we are essentially ministers of the gospel who seek to rescue, restore, and rebuild the lives of persecuted Christians. And for us, that takes on a different, it looks different in different situations. There's not a cookie cutter approach, but broadly speaking, we like to see people flourish in their own community. We don't want to just remove them from danger and bring them to Canada, the US and Australia, and have them come to the West. We actually want to see them grow in their own communities and establish themselves. So we have a Muslim, what we call MBBs, Muslim background believers. And so we want Muslim background believers to meet other Muslim background believers and have children and grow the MBB church. And so a lot of times that looks different in different environments, but we will sometimes remove someone if they're in grave danger. We might remove them from one Arab state, one Arab country, to another Arab country. And this is another thing that I think Westerners find challenging to get their heads around, is that even in the most moderate Islamic state or Arab state, your ID card, your driver's license card, your birth certificate, everything has your religion on it. And so not just your religion on your ID card, but even people would know by your birth name whether you're a Christian or a Muslim. So this idea of identity, of religious identity, is so baked into every aspect of these people's lives that they, in some cases, they cannot remove themselves from that. So they cannot pull away from that identity. And so we will sometimes move them to a neighboring country where, in a sense, they take on a new identity. They can establish themselves in that country, remove the religion from their ID card, and establish themselves as a Christian. And so and the local community doesn't know who they are because they're new. So we've done that in many cases where we've removed them and brought them into a new community where they flourish and grow. And you have whole churches, whole congregations that would be made up of just converts, no no ethnic Christians in their population. So it takes on different forms for each case. In some cases, we can remove them from a city within their country and into another city. And we have these cases called, we call it enduring livelihood, where they are kind of small grants to help set up a business. And then we have a process whereby we track the performance of that business and help them with their business plan and the modeling of that. And it's been very exciting to see that it's not only created jobs for people who were essentially jobless and kept out of the job market, but it's then they've created jobs for people just like them, converts who come and work in their business, in their shop, in their factory, or whatever it is.
Wow. And how do they find you? Do they find you through the safe houses that you set up, or how do they find you to get help?
So we have, I mean, our team have established themselves within the community. So there is a lot of word of mouth. There are also what we call trusted partners. We have a dear brother who's probably the greatest evangelist to the Muslim world in our lifetime, possibly since Islam. He has a wonderful social media following, and he's on a lot of TV channels in the Middle East. And he feeds cases to us. So he gets 10,000 communications a month from the Muslim world. He has over 2 million Facebook followers, 300,000 YouTube subscribers, and he is inundated with persecution cases. And then he sends those cases to us. Our team then go and respond to those cases and make sure that those people are who they say they are and follow up with them.
Wow. And so describe kind of the work of this, of like the safe houses. I mean, I know you guys have, I think I read, distributing thousands of these emergency relief kits and setting up safe houses, but talk about some of the practical, what does it look like on the ground in terms of what you're doing?
Sure. So a lot of times I think we're at about 18 safe houses now throughout the region, really from Morocco all the way to Iran. The safe houses, sometimes we do like whole apartment blocks. In some cases, we would just rent just one apartment. Those apartments are designated really for the extreme cases of people that need what we might call like a lightning case. A lightning case is where someone needs to get out of a dangerous situation right now. The long-term rentals, like when we do long-term, we would actually do that as a case, and we would actually just help them with their cost of living expenses. But in the safe housing, those are more immediate needs of getting out of a dangerous situation. And our reps in those countries manage those properties. We do run into the occasional breakdown where maybe someone's phone is stolen or some information is leaked, and we have to close down a location and we have to set up another location. We had that happen in Egypt recently, where our safe house was raided after a woman whose parents had claimed that we had stolen her, kidnapped her, and brainwashed her. They then went to the authorities, and that exposed the whole house. So we do run a risk with that. Our team actually run some of the greatest risks because they will oftentimes rent these places in their own name. So there is a complexity to how we structure these various lease agreements and how we control these assets.
So safe houses, emergency relief kits, you're actually underwriting business creation of small businesses, micro businesses, it sounds like, to establish sustainability for people who are relocating. Is that right?
Yeah, so roughly about a third of our expenses are safe housing, and then you're probably looking at about 15% are on the enduring livelihood, and the remaining balance is more the cost of living and lightning funds. Those would be your majority of our expenses.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Who helps fund this, and how do people get involved if they wanted to help fund or support this?
We're primarily individual gifts that come through individual donors in the U.S. and Australia and Canada and UK as well. We actually have charities in those countries. And then foundations. So we have some foundation giving, and churches are actually increasingly becoming a more significant funding source for us. But yeah, we started with just a handful of supporters, just a couple hundred supporters, and we've really grown that. In addition to growing kind of the donor network, there's been a prayer network that has grown. I mean, when we first launched, I think we had just a couple hundred people who got our prayer points every Saturday morning, and now I think we're over 7,000 people receiving our prayer points every Saturday morning. So we are heavily dependent on support, financial support, as well as those people who commit to praying individually for our team and our cases.
Yeah. I just think it's so important that actually, the actual realities that are happening. I mean, people need to learn about this. I mean, people need to know, because I mean, I had no idea the magnitude. I knew because I did a little bit of work in India. I knew a little bit about what was going on there, but I didn't understand the magnitude of it. Before we go, can you tell us a little bit about what's happening right now? Because I think a lot of people are interested in Afghanistan.
Dean, this has been the craziest 6 months of my life. What we have seen and witnessed beginning August 15th in Afghanistan was something I don't think I could have ever imagined in terms of a decline that quickly. When the Taliban came into Afghanistan, I think it caught a lot of people by surprise, including international observers and the U.S., obviously the U.S. embassy and the U.S. government. But the manner in which we withdrew, the U.S. withdrew, and the attack that the Taliban made on the Christian community and other minorities was swift. And so we had many Christians on our list that had come through Afghan Bible College, Afghan Christian Council, who had family members disappearing in the middle of the night. They had messages coming to their phones saying, "We know who you are. We know where you are. We're eventually going to catch up with you." And so we really had to spring into action. And God gave us a wonderful team of Hazara, which is a minority Shia population of Hazaras, who really safe housed a lot of these Christians, primarily in the northern part of the state of the country. And we were able to keep them alive through a series of cash houses and different financial arrangements that we had in Afghanistan for safe housing. And then on October 20th, we did 2 flights out with about 400 Christians, again, through those 2 sources, Afghan Bible College and Afghan Christian Council. And we currently have them in Abu Dhabi in a humanitarian village city, refugee camp. And it's been slow. A lot of these people have been stuck for, 150, 200 days. And so we're hopeful that Western nations are going to step up and take these people. We're hearing some positive news lately that the U.S. will send some planes in to bring these people out. But there are still, our guess is there's probably a few hundred Christians still left in Afghanistan that are in hiding. We had some people that were supposed to make our flight on October 20th that didn't, and they're literally going from location to location, running from the Taliban. And it's a horrifying thing that we're witnessing. And obviously Ukraine has kind of eclipsed that. But the reality is the Taliban is not, they're not letting up, and they are very much going to, they want to eradicate any minority or anybody who does not subscribe to their form of Islam.
Wow. So we got a lot to pray about. We got a lot to you and your team. I certainly admire and applaud what you're doing. I'm glad that we get to spread the word. Is it htp.org?
That's right, htp.org.
htp.org, Help the Persecuted. Josh, Youssef, thank you. Thanks for what you're doing, and we're with you, and we'll be praying. I need to be added to your Saturday morning prayer list.
We'll make it happen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. It's great to have you. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.